Adrian Cole was an enigma, and Maya Okafor despised herself for wanting to unravel him. From her very first week at Cole and Partners, she felt as though she'd been thrown into the middle of a storm, one that wore a tailored suit and carried thunder in his voice. Her dream job had been to work in a top-tier law firm in Lagos, and she had landed what others would have killed for, personal legal assistant to Adrian Cole, a renowned but feared corporate lawyer. At 26, she should have been proud, yet most days she dragged herself to the office with a knot in her stomach. That Monday morning set the tone for the rest of the week. Maya had arrived 30 minutes early, eager to make a good impression. She brought Adrian his coffee, double espresso, no sugar, just as the receptionist had warned her. He took one look at it, scowled, and hurled the cup across the room. The scalding liquid splattered onto her blouse, searing her chest and staining the fabric. "You call this coffee? Are you trying to poison me?" he barked, storming into his office without another glance. The rest of the staff pretended not to notice while Maya stood there, trembling and drenched. The humiliation burned hotter than the coffee itself. She wore that stained blouse the entire day, blinking away tears as she typed furiously at her desk. Every day brought fresh torment. Adrian hurled files at her, criticized her work without pause, and made her stay until long after everyone else had left. If she arrived a minute late, he reminded her she was replaceable. No matter how carefully she checked documents, memorized his schedule, or softened her voice, nothing satisfied him. He was a storm, unpredictable, destructive, magnetic. Maya told herself she hated him, but sometimes, when he thought no one was looking, she saw a flicker of loneliness in his eyes. It unsettled her more than his cruelty ever did. By Friday, she was exhausted, hands aching from endless typing, eyes red from sleepless nights. She clung to the thought of unwinding with her best friends, Lila and Nessa. Drinks, laughter, music, anything to escape. She had even ironed her yellow jumpsuit in anticipation. But when Adrian arrived early that morning, the week spiraled further down. He stopped at her desk, picked up the file she'd worked on all night, and sneered. "This is rubbish. Do you even bother reading what you write? How are you still employed here?" The words sliced through her. Maya clenched her fist, swallowing the lump in her throat. "Sir," she whispered, "if you could just tell me what I did wrong, I'll fix it." "Big mistake." He didn't answer. Instead, he grabbed a 50-page stack and tossed it across her desk. Pages fluttered like broken wings, landing in her lap, on the floor, everywhere. "Figure it out," he snapped before retreating into his office. Maya sat motionless, her chest tight, eyes burning. When the tears came, they were slow and hot. She wiped them quickly, ashamed. She gathered the papers, drew a shaky breath, and began again. That night, she cancelled her plans with Lila and Nessa. She trudged home to her tiny apartment in Surulere, dropped her bag, and collapsed onto the bed without switching on the light. The shower scalded away some of the day, but not his voice, not his insults. Under her oversized shirt, beneath the cracked ceiling fan, she whispered to herself, "You're still here. You survived. That counts for something." Adrian Cole stood in his glass-walled penthouse on Victoria Island, staring out at the sprawling Lagos skyline. The city glittered beneath him, yet he felt hollow. The night was silent, but his mind roared with noise. He replayed the look on Maya's face when he had torn her apart that morning, hurt, humiliated, trying so hard not to break. He clenched his jaw. Cruelty was his shield. It had kept him alive for years. But tonight, guilt gnawed at him in a way he couldn't shake. Maya, meanwhile, woke Saturday morning to pounding knocks on her door. Her head ached from the few shots she'd managed with her friends the night before. Still wrapped in a scarf and worn wrapper, she shuffled to the door, only to find Madame Grace, her landlady, glaring at her. "Where's my money, Maya? You're already 2 weeks late. This is no orphanage." Her boyfriend loomed behind her, arms folded, face carved in boredom. Maya pleaded softly. "Madam, I just started my job. My first salary isn't due for 3 weeks. Please, just give me time." "You have 3 days. Pack out if I don't see my money," Madame Grace snapped before marching off. Humiliation burned through Maya as curious neighbors peeked from their doors. She closed hers slowly, leaned against it, and exhaled shakily. 3 days. No savings, no family to turn to. The weight of loneliness pressed hard. Her tiny flat had become her sanctuary, her last piece of stability. Losing it wasn't an option. She tied it up, made pap and akara, and forced herself to eat. Still, the thought churned in her mind, ask Adrian. The same man who had thrown coffee at her, insulted her at every turn, and made her cry more in 1 week than she had in years. The thought made her stomach twist. Yet what other choice did she have? On Sunday morning, Maya ironed her one good church dress, a plain teal gown her grandmother had given her. She tied her hair back into a neat bun, applied a touch of lip gloss, and slipped into her worn heels. At the Catholic church near her compound, she slid into the back row and bowed her head. "Dear God," she prayed silently, "I don't want riches. I just want peace. Please, help me keep my home. Please soften my boss's heart." Tears rolled freely this time. She didn't wipe them. She let herself hope, even if just for a moment. The choir sang about grace, and the words clung to her like a fragile promise. When service ended, Maya lingered long after the pews had emptied. Walking back home, she whispered to herself, "Tomorrow, I'll ask him. Whatever happens, I'll face it." Monday morning, she arrived early, though Adrian was already there, seated in his office. He glanced at his watch, then at her. "This is how early you come in. If I'm ever here before you again, you're finished." "I'm sorry, sir," she muttered. She prepared his coffee, bringing it in cup after cup, each one dismissed until the fifth attempt earned a silent nod. That tiny acknowledgement was her only reprieve that day. By noon, with her courage trembling inside her chest, Maya walked to his office. She pressed the buzzer. He frowned. He hadn't called for her, but let her in. She stood there, palms slick, heart pounding. "If you won't speak, get out," Adrian said flatly. The words tumbled out in a rush. "Please, sir. I need an advance on my salary. My landlady gave me 3 days or I'll be thrown out. I'll pay it back, I promise." Adrian leaned back in his chair, his eyes like steel. "My firm doesn't give handouts. You work, you get paid. Don't ever mistake this place for charity." He turned back to his computer. "Now leave." Maya blinked back tears, nodded faintly, and walked out. The hallway felt endless as she dragged herself back to her desk. She worked through the rest of the day with blurred vision, filing papers, typing contracts, answering calls, her chest aching with every breath. That night, drained and defeated, she called Nessa. "Please, just enough to cover part of my rent. I'll pay you back in 3 weeks." "I'm sorry, Maya," Nessa sighed. "I just bought a car. I have nothing left." "It's okay," Maya whispered, though it wasn't. She hung up and lay on her bed, eyes swollen, thoughts racing. Just as she began to drift, a knock rattled her door. She braced herself for Madame Grace. But when she opened it, her breath caught. Adrian Cole stood there in a crisp navy shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows, expression unreadable. Maya's hand lingered on the door frame, her heart slamming in her chest. "Sir," she whispered, barely able to breathe. Adrian glanced around her modest flat before fixing his gaze on her. "May I come in?" Wordlessly, she stepped aside. He entered, surveying the small space with a detached calm that only heightened her unease. "I figured you lived somewhere like this," he said casually. She stiffened, unsure if it was meant as insult. He caught her reaction and added quickly, "I didn't come here to shame you. I came to make you an offer." "An offer?" she asked cautiously, arms crossed protectively. "I can pay your rent. All of it. Today." His voice was blunt, his eyes scanning her as though waiting for a response he already knew. Silence weighed heavy between them. Maya's throat tightened. She didn't ask how he had found her address. Adrian Cole had resources to uncover anything. But she also knew money from a man like him wouldn't come without strings. "What do you want in return?" she asked finally, her voice steady though her stomach twisted. His gaze lingered. "I think you already know." The air shifted. Something unspoken sparked between them, electric, heavy, dangerous. Her breath quickened. She didn't move when he stepped closer, didn't pull away when he brushed her cheek with the back of his hand. "Maya," he murmured. "Say no if you want me to leave." She opened her mouth, but no sound came. Her body trembled, not from fear, but from a need she couldn't bury. A hunger born of exhaustion, loneliness, and the desperate ache for release. When his lips met hers, the world tilted. His kiss was not tender but consuming, and she melted into it against her better judgment. His hands traced her sides, firm, demanding, yet coaxing her deeper into the moment. Her defenses crumbled. The touch of his skin, the heat of his breath, the low growl in his throat, all of it pulled her into a spiral she could no longer resist. His body pressed against hers with relentless certainty. She let him guide her, let the tension of weeks dissolve into reckless surrender. Clothes fell away. the air filled with the sound of hurried breaths and tangled whispers. She gave herself over to the fire that consumed them both, each movement erasing the line between disdain and desire. Her mind screamed against it, but her body betrayed her, answering him with urgency, with a rawness that startled her. Hours blurred into a haze of sweat and gasps. When his release finally came, her body shuddered with its own wave of helpless ecstasy. She collapsed onto the bed, chest heaving, limbs trembling. Adrian lingered a moment longer, then dressed swiftly. 4 million naira will be wired to you in 20 minutes, he said flatly, as though concluding a business deal. The door closed behind him, leaving Maya sprawled across her sheets, spent, confused, ashamed. Her body still hummed with the memory of him, but her heart twisted in knots. She stared at the cracked ceiling, asking herself silently, "What have I done?" Back in his penthouse, Adrian tossed his keys onto the counter and raked his hands through his hair. Regret hit him like a fist. What had he done? She had been fragile, uncertain, and yet she had let him in, not just into her home, but into herself. And it hadn't been just physical. Something deeper had surfaced, something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. The thought terrified him. He had built his empire on walls, walls of steel, walls of fear, but Maya had slipped through without trying. Now she haunted his every breath. In her own bed, Maya lay awake, equally restless. One part of her hated herself for giving in to him. Another part couldn't erase the memory of his touch, the way he looked at her as though she mattered. Desire and resentment warred inside her until sleep finally claimed her in the early hours. When morning came, both knew, something between them had shifted, and there was no undoing it. The next morning, Adrian Cole sat at his desk in his usual immaculate suit, but the sharpness in his demeanor had dulled. He told himself to act as if nothing had happened, to treat Maya like any other employee. Yet when she entered the office, eyes lowered, movements careful, he knew he couldn't. He didn't criticize her coffee. He didn't bark orders. For the first time since she started, he simply watched her work in silence. Around midday, he pressed the intercom. "Maya, my office." She froze, pulse thundering. Was this the moment he would humiliate her again? She walked in cautiously, and what she found startled her. Adrian wasn't angry. He gestured for her to sit. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly. Maya blinked. That was the last thing she expected. "I've been cruel, hiding behind power and position because it's easier than confronting how I feel." He paused, eyes clouded with memory. "The truth is, the last time I let someone close, I was destroyed." He stood and leaned against the front of his desk. Her name was Leora. We met in law school. She was brilliant, sharp, everything I thought I wanted. I believed she loved me. She knew my dreams, my fears, my vulnerabilities. And she used them all against me. While I thought we were building a future, she was draining my accounts and sabotaging my opportunities. When I confronted her, she laughed. Said I was just another game. Maya's breath caught. The rawness in his voice disarmed her. "She broke something in me," Adrian continued. "After that, I swore no one would ever get close again. I buried myself in work, built walls so high they became my armor. Fear is easier than trust. But then you came along." He met her eyes, unflinching. "You're different. You're not pretending." And that terrified me. So instead of admitting what you made me feel, I punished you for it. The silence between them thickened. Maya's throat tightened as his words sank in. "I don't expect you to forgive me overnight," Adrian said softly. "But I need you to know this. Last night wasn't a mistake to me. It wasn't power. It wasn't manipulation. It was me, trying to feel again. And you reminded me how." Maya's heart thudded painfully. She wanted to be angry, wanted to throw his apology back in his face, but his honesty left her unsteady. "I want to do better," he said. "I want you to let me in, not just physically, but truly. And I know I don't deserve it, but I'm willing to earn it. Give me the chance to show you who I really am." She could barely trust her voice when she whispered, "I'll think about it." For Adrian, that was enough. He nodded once. "Take the rest of the afternoon off." "Are you serious?" she asked, startled. "Don't make me say it twice." His mouth twitched in the faintest smile. As she left the office, a weight lifted, just slightly. She didn't know if she could believe him, but for the first time since meeting Adrian Cole, she felt something stirring inside her. Hope. Fragile, trembling, but real. That evening, she wandered the streets of Victoria Island aimlessly. The air was thick with the scent of grilled suya, the the clamor of Danfo buses, and the laughter of strangers. Inside, however, she was quiet, replaying Adrian's words. Not his insults, not his cruelty, but his confession. She didn't know if she could trust it, but she wanted to. When she finally returned home, her phone buzzed. A message glowed on the screen. "Maya, thank you for today. I meant every word." Her hands trembled as she typed back. "I'll let you know." The next day, Adrian approached her desk with an uncharacteristic gentleness. "Do you have a moment?" Inside his office, he sat beside her at the small table instead of behind his imposing desk. "We started on the wrong foot. I'd like to try again, from the beginning. Properly." "You mean like a do-over?" she asked cautiously. "Exactly. As two people, not boss and assistant." Maya hesitated, then let out a shaky breath. "Okay, we can try." Relief flickered across his face. "Then dinner. Tonight. A real one. No games, no pressure." Her lips curved in a faint smile. "All right. One dinner." When she shook his hand, for the first time, their touch wasn't tense. It felt like new ground, uncertain but promising. Maya stood before her mirror, staring at her reflection with restless uncertainty. She had tried on 3 outfits already, each one either too stiff or too casual. This wasn't just dinner. This was dinner with Adrian Cole, the same man who once made her cry in the bathroom, now asking for a chance to be more. Finally, she chose a simple black dress that hugged her figure without being revealing. She tied her hair back in a soft bun, added a touch of makeup, and slipped into her modest heels. By the time she stepped outside, Adrian's sleek black sedan was waiting. He got out immediately, walked around, and opened the passenger door. His eyes softened. "You look stunning." "Thank you," she replied quietly, settling into the seat. They drove in comfortable silence, city lights streaming past the windows. Adrian brought her to a rooftop restaurant overlooking the lagoon, fairy lights twinkling above while soft jazz drifted through the air. "I've never been here," Maya admitted as they sat down. "I thought you hadn't," he said with a faint smile. "I wanted it to be special." Over plates of grilled seafood and jollof risotto, conversation flowed more easily than either expected. They spoke of childhood memories, books that had left their mark, the ache of loss, the ambition that drove them, and the loneliness of being misunderstood. For once, Adrian wasn't the ruthless CEO. He spoke of his late mother, a nurse who worked herself to the bone, and of his estranged father, who had never forgiven him for leaving the family business to pursue law. Maya listened quietly, occasionally reaching across the table to squeeze his hand. For the first time, she saw Adrian not as a storm, but as a man weathered by his own scars. When the plates were cleared, neither wanted dessert. The moment felt too full already. They moved to the railing, overlooking the shimmering cityscape. "I'm scared," Maya confessed softly. "Me too," Adrian replied without hesitation. "But I don't want to be anymore." His eyes, once cold and guarded, now held vulnerability. "Can I kiss you?" he asked. She nodded. His lips touched hers, slow and deliberate, a promise rather than a demand. When he pulled back, she whispered, "This feels different." "Because it is." They left hand in hand, the night wrapping them in fragile possibility. Something new had begun, something real. 1 year later, Cole and Partners looked different. The reception was warmer, the staff less fearful, the air lighter. Adrian Cole remained sharp and precise, but he was no longer the tyrant everyone dreaded. Many credited the change to one person, Maya Okafor. She was no longer his assistant but the head of internal legal operations, still hardworking, still the first to arrive and last to leave. But now, when she passed Adrian's office, the look they exchanged spoke of something deeper: growth, grace, and love. Outside the firm, they built a quiet life together. Evenings filled with laughter and long conversations replaced the cold isolation both once knew. Maya started a mentorship program for young women in law, something she had long dreamed of. Adrian, for his part, reconciled with his estranged father, a painful but healing journey Maya walked with him. They didn't rush marriage. They didn't need labels to prove what they had built. But one evening, on the same rooftop where their first real date began, Adrian knelt with a simple diamond ring. Tears spilled down Maya's cheeks as she whispered yes. Not because their story was flawless, it wasn't. But because together, they had survived storms and created their own calm. Love, once a battlefield, had become a home.